Hi, I'm going to share something with you, old school. But that's because I'm old school. Anyways, I'm going to old school share something with you that I think a lot of people misunderstand or undervalue or have never really thought about. And it matters so much if your child has a cognitive challenge. So let me get to this side of the board. Minimize the shadowing and let you see my brain. Every once in a while I like to show off my big brain. Okay, here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the difference between teaching a child who's challenged one step at a time or teaching in a messier, more generalized fashion. So let's call this, and I can only do this once because I only bought one poster board. Here's hoping. Let's call this the learning line. Let's pretend that it's from, say, age 4 or 3 to age 20. So here they are at 20, 20, and here they are at, let's say, 4. Sorry for the jiggly, but I've kind of manufactured this. Okay, there we go. So from 4 to 20, they want to learn stuff, and they're cognitively challenged. In this case, the thing that made me think about sharing this with you is autism and ABA. So very often when you want to teach something, people teach it in exclusion. So let's use an example. Let's take a different color, and let's call putting on your shoes a red skill. Okay. So we're going to put on their shoes. They're going to learn to put on their shoes. It's very possible that this child has a sensory disorder in such a way that putting on shoes is uncomfortable, and this is a very difficult skill. So you're going to constantly go, put on your shoes, put on your shoes, put on your shoes, put on your shoes. Eventually, you get shoes. Maybe I'd draw a shoe if I was an artist. Let's give it a try. Here's my shoe. I'm not an artist. Okay, it's a boot. It's something. All right, you've got put on shoes. You manage to shift their sensory problem from I'm uncomfortable with shoes on to I'm uncomfortable with shoes off. But now you have a new problem. You have to figure out how to get them to stop wearing their shoes when it's appropriate to not wear their shoes. So when you go to the beach and you say, take your shoes off and walk barefoot in the sand, they can't do it. They're completely uncomfortable. They're screaming and crying. Or when you say, look, let's feel this beautiful grass under our toes. Or you're in the pool. You don't need shoes. Now, some of this is easy to fix. You just go and get water shoes, for example. But there's a life of experience that isn't happening because this child who you believed was only capable of learning this isolated skill of put on your shoes does not know when to wear what shoe, if any. So what you really want to get is way up here. They may be 20 when they get it all together, but you want, and I'm going to try not to be so wiggly here. Appropriate. Here's hoping that you spell appropriate with 2 T's. Okay, let's forget it. I look like I have Parkinson's. I don't have a support back here. So you want appropriate shoe wearing at the appropriate time in the appropriate shoe. How do you get that? Well, some people would think, we got him to wear shoes. Now we'll create a new bubble here about not wearing shoes. That doesn't actually work because you're still doing one isolated thing at a time without explaining or teaching in the way that will generalize. So this, I remember when my one son was very young. I dealt with it with all the kids, but with my one son, I remember going for this, doing this thing of, we're going to do it one isolated skill at a time, and hitting the goal and going, oh my gosh, that took 1.5 years. if I have to take a year and a half on every single skill, he's going to be 20 before he has, let's say 10, 15 skills. That is a problem. Okay, so what I do instead is I do the repetition of put on your shoes, put on your shoes, put on your shoes. But I simultaneously teach, and here's where it gets confusing. So you go, yes, put on your shoes when you walk on the wood chips or you'll get slivers. No, take off your shoes when you walk on the beach. Put on your shoes when you... Now there's errors and errors and errors that go on here. You don't need the shoes with the laces. You can use the shoes with Velcro here. No, you need rubber boots for the rain. So put on the rubber boots, and it goes yes and then no, and then yes and then no. And very often what happens is the child gets all confused and you get all confused and you're up here and you're making this big mess. But if you're always explaining and saying yes shoes here, no shoes there, yes shoes here, no shoes there, slowly but surely time is going by. And you're saying why you wear the shoes you do. And here, why don't you pick shoes? And people are saying to you, you're not teaching him anything. Look, he's still not even doing the shoes properly. And then one day, it's like a miracle. And he does appropriate shoes at the appropriate time and has actually healed the sensory issue. For the most part, everyone has stuff that stays, rather than exchanging one sensory issue for another. So you have actually helped this child to grow a full awareness of shoes. Okay, that's still not such great news, is it? Because you're like, what, 20 years to understand the fullness of shoes? He'll be, 310 before, that's no good. But what if, actually I'm not going to do pink, let's do blue. Okay, so what if you're teaching other things at the same time? Yes, it's messy, because nature and life are messy. When I was first learning how to help children with autism, I tried behavioral modification and ABA, and I tried the one step at a time, and I tried all these different methods. I even was learning Sunrise, which was in a playroom where we could be messy and fun, but we had to be isolated in the playroom. So the kids were less violent, less aggressive, much happier. They learned a little slower, that makes sense, right? They were learning more like this. But they were also learning, here, where's my black, in the isolation of a playroom. So when they left the playroom, they very often lost all the skills, or at least a lot of them, in the same way that this one step at a time meant when you went into a different circumstance, you didn't know how to do it. But if you're willing to be messy, then you're going to nurture your child in a very different, more sophisticated way. We don't want chaos. Now, there's a fine line between chaos and an enriched environment. An enriched environment has a lot of positive words, a lot of encouragement, a lot of love, a lot of explanations, and a lot of consistency of goal. You don't have to be consistent 100% in putting on the shoes, because that, as you saw, created a problem. But you want consistency of goal. No, we're learning about shoes. You can learn about shoes. You can at the same time learn about pants and learn about socks and all kinds of things. Let's say you're learning get in the car. And I'm saying that because I know someone who this was one of their issues. So let's say this is get in the car. Oh, and also I had a son with this, so let's talk about that. So this is get in the car. Well, I'm still doing this whenever shoes come up, but shoes aren't coming up. That subject's not up 24/7. And me sitting him down at a table to say, let's do shoes, just makes shoes difficult. I'm waiting like an opportunist for the moment when shoe teaching makes sense. At the same time, I'm doing all kinds of other things. So let's say we're doing get in the car, and let's pretend that this particular child hates going through doors. And so he has to go through the car door to get in the car. But you want him to get in the car, right? So you're thinking, let's teach get in the car, get in the car, get in the car, get in the car. And Now you have a child who can get in the car because you were consistent, you were steady, and you did it all the time. But now they're getting in everybody's car and they're crawling into the taxi without being invited and they're going into abandoned cars. And my son did this, so it's a real thing. So you don't want that. I had to undo that. You don't want just get in the car. You want two things. Why doesn't he want in the car? If it's the door thing that I explained, then you're going to do doors of all kinds. Let's pretend, for simplicity right now, that it's just get in the car. Well, now, how often do you need to do car and shoes at the same time? Quite frequently, right? So you're going to do shoe, and you're going to explain why you wear your shoes in the car, or why it's okay to carry your shoes to the car and put them on in the car. See, you have to be flexible and adaptable. Maybe the fact that the child doesn't have to wear the shoes to get in the car will help them get in the car. So you try all of that. But you still keep teaching all of this. So now I'm saying, get in the car to go get ice cream. My eye is on the ice cream. Get in the car to go to Auntie's. Ooh, I don't like Auntie's. I don't want to get in the car. Get in the car, and you're going in and out of, we get in the car to do this. We don't get in taxis unless Mommy and Daddy are with us, or we don't get in taxis unless we have permission. Whatever it is, depending on the learning curve. You're going to go up and down in this. There's going to be mistakes, and you're going to go back. Meanwhile, you're doing shoes. Meanwhile, you're, hey, this is exactly like raising a child. You see, your autistic child is no different than anybody. Just processing maybe slower, or perceiving in an unusual fashion, or having a sensory difference. So when I say he's no different, I don't mean there isn't a reason for this diagnosis. What I mean is, it's okay to learn in the natural environment. It will take time. You'll do it a million times. It's going to be over and over again. But if you're teaching the concepts, if you're teaching the whys and the wherefores, and you're having good reasons that the child cares about, not just you, if you're doing that at some point, because that is what you want to be consistent about, at some point, your child goes, oh, appropriate cars, getting in at the appropriate time, in the appropriate pair of shoes, with the appropriate shirt, and the appropriate pair of pants, and the correct family member. At some point, one at a time, you'll see these dominoes fall. In this enriched environment that felt like chaos to you because it was so much work and it would have been easier to just sit them at a desk. This is not chaos. This is sophisticated brain-making stuff. You teach all in the mess. You explain all in the mess. And you do some of this. Because they do need repetition, because they are learning at a different pace, and they do need it separated out. You just don't use that as your primary tool. You want it all. And hey, isn't that why you became a mom or dad? To get it all. So it's okay if it takes a little time. Let me pop over here and turn this off.